We have Ahsoka's filming, often several episodes at once with different directors.
Yep.
Skeleton Crew, which is John Watts and Chris Ford's show.
Mando.
And then Mando, I'm doing editing and visual effects and writing. There are so many different creative nodes that are all sharing with one another, all around this world that George Lucas built. Our partnership is...
Our offices are next door to each other. We have whiteboards.
Yes, so we scribble a lot. He draws really well. I draw okay.
You draw fine.
I draw fine, but oftentimes we'll talk visually, sometimes because Dave comes out of animation. So very good at expressing ideas visually. But then there's also so many characters in Star Wars and so many time periods that we draw upon that we're often making charts of how things would intersect and how things would impact one another. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to just, I think also a lot like animation, just storytelling, us pitching each other ideas. And when you pitch, it's not always like, hey, this is a great idea. It's like, take it from here. Is there anything to this? And then he'll say, you know what I like about that is I like this. And then we'll zero in on that. And then we're both writers, so we both go off and write on our own. And then we'll give or contribute a scene or something or a punch up. But really, it's more about getting the ideas going.
You know, we have the greatest toy box in the world in Star Wars and so many great characters. I think the challenge is actually not when you start, it's where we are now, so many seasons in with Mando. So we don't just have Star Wars history and lore that came before us. We have our own that have been built up on, say, just the Mandalorians and the culture of wearing helmets and not helmets and how do those things intersect, which has become a big story point.
Have you ever removed your helmet? By creed, you must vow.
Luckily, you know, I think we like the same type of stories. When he was talking about Westerns at the beginning of Mando, I'm like, yep, I know these. And I'm like, I want my episode of Ahsoka in Mando season 2 to be like Yojimbo. He's like, I love Yojimbo. And so we just talk in that language too. And that's the way George and I always talk. We talked about movies. There's a love of cinema and film that's part of Star Wars' DNA. So we keep a lot of that alive as well.
We have Ahsoka's filming, often several episodes at once with different directors.
Yep.
Skeleton Crew, which is John Watts and Chris Ford's show. That's going on several stages. So we basically have the whole studio lot.
Mando.
And then Mando, I'm doing editing and visual effects and writing. There are so many different creative nodes that are all sharing with one another, all around this world that George Lucas built. And all of us loving Star Wars and wanting to contribute to that world.
You know, Star Wars is a great moment that expresses it, is like when Mando looks at Baby Yoda for the first time. That's Star Wars, that feeling. And so while the bigger galaxy and the starships and the space battles and all those things are happening, it's those deep personal connections between characters. So those are the things that you try to replicate to get a feeling of Star Wars. And you're always talking about, you know, how do you expand that galaxy beyond what it was, but keep and maintain the heart of you know, what you saw originally. And to me, the touchstone is always George. I look at George's movies, I look at the things that he was interested in, and I try to fold that into a bit of what I'm doing and what John and I are doing.
Skeleton Crew is great because it was me and John Watts when we're on the set of Spider-Man. I was just sort of sniffing out if it's something he might be into doing. He's like, I have a whole idea for what I would do. And we were just talking on the set, and then I called Dave from, I was out in Atlanta. I was like, Dave, this sounds really good. You want to listen to this idea that sounded good? We hopped on a Zoom call. They pitched through what it was, just the very basic strokes. I was like, this is great. It focused on young people. It's always good to have new characters coming in. And there are so many different tones now in Star Wars. You know, you have Andor that, you know, is intrigue and a thriller, you know. You have adventure. You have, with The Mandalorian, you know, samurai adventure with Ahsoka. So to have this young Amblin feeling movie with young people seeing it for the first time, seeing who grew up in the Star Wars world and are exposed to adventure, the puppets, the costumes, the visuals, the world that's being expanded upon. And now I get to write the next season of Mandalorian with all these new characters and new locations and new creatures. So it just keeps adding more and more. And so there's this cohesive group of stories that are being told thanks to all these filmmakers that are contributing.
You can't plan these things and say, well, it's going to be this. Star Wars is this amazing way of meandering and becoming something else. It tells you where it wants to go. That galaxy is so much broader and vast than I think we ever realized when it started with A New Hope. And it's to its credit, we're still telling stories with it today. People love that universe, that galaxy that it's set in. Like, what? He comes with an idea. Here's a story. I dreamed up a story in that galaxy, and we heard it and we're like, I get that we should tell that. In a short time here, it'll be 20 years I've been at Lucasfilm.
Wow.
And I still love it. Like, when I go in, it's still exciting every day.
It's a dream job.